Hi, welcome. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the spiritual aspect of relationship with dogs. And this being Sunday, Father's Day, so I wish everyone, okay, watching this video, a very happy Father's Day. Hopefully, you get to spend it in a way that is kind of edifying and kind of lifts you up a little bit in terms of your role as being a father, a role model to your kids, and hopefully that's recognized. Hopefully you get some nice words of encouragement from your children as a father. So again, happy Father's Day. So I just want to put that out there to all the fathers watching this video. But again, in terms of just looking at the spiritual side of things, and this relates to really my own personal journey. I'm gonna put out a weekly video for those who are kind of questioning things in terms of, is there a God? Kind of looking at the depth of and this is where I'm coming from, is I really believe there are no accidents or coincidences. Okay, everything has meaning, purpose. Looking back on certain things in my own life, I see very clearly, maybe not at the time, but I can see very clearly that God was working through things, getting my attention. And this goes into this issue about, this is what I'm going to focus on in this video, in terms of just looking towards, even ask the question of what is truth. The same question that Pilate asked of Jesus. Jesus, just before going to, encountering the cross, going to the cross, dying for our sin. But that calls into question, what is truth? But in terms of revelation, and I'll talk through a little of this on this video, in terms of, regardless of what storms we go through in our life, challenges, there's all sorts of things that in this fallen world that we'll encounter, that calls into question, what the big question, what's purpose and meaning in our life? Is there a God? And it's interesting that I do encounter this quite a bit. Even in terms of dog training, I get a lot of responses from individuals on a lot of my social media and videos from those who will advocate. I call it this ideology, but getting this whole so-called science of dog training. But I get a lot of individuals that will throw that out, in terms of about God and faith, and a lot of times in a mocking way. Okay, really try to mock me for that, because it's something that I will on occasion talk about, but this is why, again, I'm going to be doing some of these videos to really put it out from my journey, my own personal experience and encounter. And because for me, this journey, even with dogs, holds special meaning for me, and just the depth of understanding in terms of what it points towards. And so really, and this is where, you talk about the order of things, okay? And this is where, to me, it's all about that. It's about getting the order right. God first, then spouse, your children, and then animals. And how I see things is like people, oftentimes get that order wrong. They start to elevate, animals up. And when you start to do that, again, it brings on this issue of confusion. And there is an order of things, and that's how I live my life, in terms of recognizing that, even in terms of sometimes you struggle through things, but not through those struggles, still not denying who Christ is. That to me is important. It's about identity. It's about understanding truly who He is. It's through the Bible, okay, placing that as the authority, and then from there. And this is, again, and I'll tell you something, I encourage people to think about this, and I see this a lot, even within the dog training world, And not saying this, I don't want to come off judgmental this way, but it's the truth. A lot of those who promote this so-called science of dog training are the same ones that are just mocking and going on, and are just self-proclaimed atheists, and they say it, but then the most confused, okay, rebellious, just like make my crooked path straight and just coming off a certain way, and I'm thinking to myself, this is ridiculous. But in the mass, right? And talk about these storms and those who just promote this stuff, and then the confusion and all that stuff that comes about through that, and then wanting to come off like having all the answers, and couldn't be the furthest from the truth, right? Because here's the thing, and I'll put this out, is that it's about surrender, okay? You have to understand or get the roles right, but to surrender how you think. Surrender is a big theme here in terms of surrendering how we think, in terms of being humble enough to recognize, to say, hey, you know what, I don't have all the answers, but perhaps there's somebody who does. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about, Christ, who he is, and how that points all towards that. So again, my encouragement today is for people to recognize that there is depth, okay? There are people looking for answers, but it's funny how it's interesting how this theme does come up. I see this, so that's why I'm going to talk through it, and I am going to put out a weekly video talking about it, talking through it, because there's really a lot of interesting things that I see happening, in terms of what's happening, in terms of even the relationship we have with, say, our dogs, that God will get our attention through all sorts of different things in our life, and it's an opportunity again to go deeper. But to ask that question, it's like Pilate asked, what is truth? And that's an interesting question, because it's recognizing that there's things in our life that for a reason will cause us to question that ultimate, what is ultimate truth? Is there a God? What does that really mean to us? And for me, I know I know the answer to that for me, and how that kind of transfers over to other things. So again, dogs to me are part of my life, but through all that, I'll tell you something, it really is an amazing journey, and to help other people, what that means to me in terms of with dogs, that points towards all of that. And so anyway, I just want to put it out there that I encourage people really if you're asking that question, what is truth, or what is my purpose in life, and what does all that mean? For our dogs, it's an opportunity. It ties into that. It's amazing. But this is why I don't skim the surface with stuff. This is why, to me, when I started my journey, just led me into more and more questions, right? And wanting to go further, but not wanting to be bound up, and that's what happens in this type of, ideological, framework that people want to come into agreement with. And then, and this is why I said I shake my head, because it's like people want to come off a certain way and then not have any of the answers. And I put stuff out, well, it's very interesting, to say the least, in terms of just, because there is a spiritual aspect here for sure, and I'll tell you there is. But again, I just encourage people to think about that. I'm going to talk more at length I'll put out a weekly video, about different aspects of faith, of asking that question, is there a God? What does that mean to people? But but in that theme, I'll just put out a resource and help people along a little bit. Is Lee Strobel? Okay, he's an author. He put out he's written a book. He was a journalist, and a lot of that was really perpetuated through asking those questions about is God who he says he is? Is he real? What does that mean? And his journey. So Lee Strobel's written a book, The Case for Christ. I have a couple copies of it myself that I, will use as a resource, but I'd encourage you to check that book out. It's called The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. And he goes through that whole thing about the Bible, how was it, put together, the questions about is Jesus who he says he is. So I'd encourage you to pick up that resource and start to read through it if you have questions about that. And it's an amazing book because, you know, it really, in a very intelligent way, goes through and you know, he went through the whole journey of that. But it goes into that question, you know, what is truth? And ultimately, it all points towards, for me, it points directly towards God. Thanks for watching.